well, I never really put anything about my family on social media, but I'm really focusing on that. Focusing on being a great father, being there with my kids, spending time with my kids. That keeps me mentally in shape.
Get ready to tune in to stories of average men striving for greatness, to become the leaders that are needed in their homes, in their career, and their communities. This is the Brotherhood of Fatherhood podcast.
What's up, man? It's Scott. Of course, today I have with me Jason Piccolo. And by the time this drops, unless I do a special release, he'll have already spent a weekend with me and Josh and Alex and all the guys coming to the big event doing really cool things. So Jason is, boy, we'll have to kind of get the details from him because his life has already changed since I first met him. But he's been a border agent, among many other things. He's an author. He's a podcaster. He's a TV host type guy. You do everything, Jason. Welcome to the show, man.
Thanks, man. Yeah, my title has changed over the past 30 years, I should say now. 30 years I've been, and next September will be 30 years I've been doing something for the government or something. So yeah, it's been an interesting life so far.
Yeah. Well, like I said, when I first met you, like, oh, I work for Court TV, and you were doing a bunch of firearms stuff, and you're also a professor or teach courses at least in college. I know you love to rock. You have the Protagonist podcast, among other things. So seriously, what all are you doing right now?
Right now, I am just living my second life, I like to call it. I always give this kind of talk about how most of my life I'm 49. So most of my life up to 40 was always about building this professional resume, this resume that, hey, you know what? I'm going to get a corporate gig. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that, even though I work for the government. But it would always be something that would be like either career progression or something. So I have like every certification you can imagine. I got master's, doctorates, writing and stuff like that. But then when I hit 42, 43, I said, you know what? I need to start working on my personal resume. And that's why I do a lot of different things, whether it's rucking, whether now it's physical fitness, whether it's biking, shooting. I love shooting, and writing and TV stuff and podcasting. That's kind of like my thing I love doing now. So that's why you'll see I do a lot of different things, and I try to become an expert at all of them. So, I mean, it's very interesting and very busy. And on top of that, I'm a dad, and I love being a dad and a family guy.
Yeah. I mean, I pay attention to your content, and so near and dear to my heart, of course. I'm not, LEO or ex-military or anything, so you're out there rocking all the time.
Scott, I'm going to stop you right there. Listen, being an LEO, being ex-military, none of that changes anybody from being what I call a protector or what I call a protagonist. Scott, you're taking charge of your life. You're doing a lot of physical fitness stuff. You're out there with your son. You're doing a lot of different things that shows that you are the hero of your story. So
Awesome.
That's the other thing is like the military and law enforcement, they're just chapters of my life, but they're not the full story. And that's the same thing with everybody else. You don't have to be former anything to be the protagonist.
And I like that because I have noticed that about you. And so you're doing a lot of rucking right now, and which is awesome. I absolutely love to ruck. I probably ruck 4 to 7 times a week. So I'm putting my miles in. I'm breaking my shoulders, I feel like, every time. But you're really into shooting right now, which is incredible. I love watching the journey, and you recently got into shotguns. We could talk forever on, like, you were doing lever action, you're doing shotguns, you're doing competitive like pistol and courses and all sorts of things. But seriously, your life as a public servant, that's about that. Is that door closed or almost closed?
It may be closed in January. I'm looking at retirement, or I may retire. Eventually, I might get back into public service, whether that's in a political realm or sheriff or police or something. But right now, I'm just going to I'm looking at retirement next year, then kind of see what happens from there.
You have a book that I read called Unwavering, and you have more books. You have 2 books out now?
I have 2 books, and I'm working on like a Protagonist.
Okay, well, let's talk about Protagonist. So when you have the Protagonist podcast, when did that start and why did it start? Tell me the backstory to that.
Well, I have a podcast for a long time now
That's
called the
right.
Protectors Podcast. It's ranked top 5% in the world, which is incredible. But I wanted something that kind of talks to everybody. The Protectors really talks to the protector community, which is, law enforcement, emergency responders, military, and those that support them. I kind of looked at it different. Like in the past, I don't know, 6, 7 months, I'm like, you know what? Everybody can be a protector, and a lot of people can be a protagonist. And a lot of people, to me, a protagonist is like the hero, the main character of a story. So, you know what? I'm going to have a spin off of the Protectors podcast called Becoming the Protagonist, where I'll talk to people who have become protagonists of their life. Whether it's someone that's I had a great guest on the other day, Brolick. That's her nickname. She was a MMA fighter, women's football, former Marine, left a really bad living situation and became the protagonist of her life for her and her daughter. I've had the guy who rescued Marcus Luttrell, the pararescueman, on there. I've had so many different people that are becoming on the show, and it's really taking off. The protagonist is kind of like my key word now. Whenever I do anything, I'm always like, I'm becoming the protagonist. It's also part of my road to 50. I'll be 50 next year. So I'm always like, how am I going to be the best protagonist I can be at 50 years old? And I don't want to be that former thing anymore. I don't want to be like I used to be before. I want to be this different protagonist. I want to be the best I can be. And that's why when I'm writing this book, I'm writing and I'm talking to people and I'm shooting and I'm doing all this, I'm meeting different people and I'm kind of putting into their ear that, hey, you know what? You are the protagonist. You don't need to look up to anybody else to be the protagonist of your story. You are the hero of your story. There's a lot of different people out there, quote unquote influencers, and a lot of people in these communities who a lot of people look up to be their heroes. And a lot of them, I'd hate to be really blunt in this interview, but a lot of them are grifters. So the thing is, you need to find your own protagonist, and that own protagonist is you. And you do what you can to be the protagonist. Hey, you want to go shoot? Learn how to shoot. You don't have to be LEO, military, or anything to go start these competitions. Everybody, I've been doing a lot of International Defensive Pistol Association, U.S. Pistol Association. I'm doing 3-gun now. I'm doing everything I can to just have fun. And when I go out there, when I look at the sign up list, on there it says, military or law enforcement and all these other characters. Maybe a handful out of 100 are any of those. So it's a lot of civilian types and a lot of regular everyday people who want to be protagonists. So do it. Don't hesitate to do anything.
Yeah, I think it's a really good way to phrase it. I love the concept. I have listened to the Protectors podcast and actually really enjoyed it. I mean, talk a lot about firearms and a lot of subjects, but I do understand where it definitely has its niche. Like there was parts I was like, I'm trying to follow this, but I'm not quite sure the language they're using or whatever. So the Protagonist makes a lot of sense, and I kind of feel like sometimes, actually, oftentimes, I'm screaming from the rooftop for men to be the protagonist because I don't think we always see. I mean, you even call me out like, hey, look, you don't have to have that background. And I think there's a lot of misunderstanding for men of I needed to have done something really incredible. And you've done some pretty incredible things. So sometimes we see the people that are talking about it and we attach some of their accomplishments to the need of being that role. But, when you put it in terms of like my family, absolutely. And also a protector. I mean, I'm not going to just skate through life and think everything is perfect and that I don't need to be prepared for, financial dropout or, actual physical harm or an emergency situation. Yeah. And I watched this happening, and I'd like to hear your view of it, but I watch this happening, and there's just many, many, many men that just aren't standing into that role. And it's really hurtful to watch. It's like, I kind of take it personal. Like, how can you not want to be the person? How can you not see yourself as capable of doing those roles?
Well, I tell you what, about a year ago, and you could attest to this because you've probably been watching my social media. I wasn't in the best shape of my life. I wasn't the protagonist I should be. And I have all those former titles. I have all the former whatever. So it doesn't matter. what your background is. You can start tomorrow and be it, and you need to. You always
Hmm.
hear that phrase alpha male and then betas. I'm coming up with a new one that's called the Charlie male. And this is the guy who's sitting in the back. He knows how to shoot. He knows how to provide for his family. He knows how to protect his family. Let me take that back. You don't have to know how to shoot. That's me. But you know how to protect your family, whether that's financially, you know how to support them, and you know when to step up. The alpha male is out there all the time. You see them all over social media, the quote unquote bro vets and all these other people out there, these grifters and influencers. And I'm
That's
not,
cool. Go for it.
yeah, I am throwing shade at them because, and I don't, I'm not going to name
Hmm.
names, but you know who they are. And they're out there. They're the forefront of themselves. They love themselves so much. They love to scream all the time that they're alpha, alpha, alpha. And then you have the beta males who are just like, you look at them the wrong way and
Hmm.
they pass out. The Charlie male to me is like you're sitting in the back, you're taking care of your family, you're taking care of yourself, you're working on yourself. Nobody needs to know it. Nobody needs to know that you're there, ready to pounce, to attack, to do anything to protect your family or to provide for your family. You're bettering yourself. You're doing a lot of different things. You don't back down from people, but you're not out there with your chest pumping saying, look at me. That is kind of what I call the Charlie. This is someone who's like, they're ready to go. You always, and I hate those adages about the lions, the sheep, the wolves, and shit. It's this: you're there, something hits the fan, you're going to go and you're going to do everything. You're going to capitalize on violence. You're going to capitalize on what you know, and you're going to protect your family. You're going to provide
Hmm.
for your family, and you are the protagonist. Nobody needs to know that you're the hero, and nobody needs to know that what your limits are. Only you. You just kind of build and build and build. You're you could be surprised of what you could do with your body when you take that next step.
Don't you think a lot of people overestimate um, their use of force or their personal ability? I think that's a really common thing. But you really hit something that we're seeing a lot, and it is this alpha male. And someone asked me the other day, actually, it was yesterday, a very capable man. Actually, he's going to be at the big event, Aaron. And he asked me, he's like, he dropped a name, and it's one of these guys, and I'm like, I'm not a fan. And he said, he didn't tell me he wasn't a fan or was a fan. He said, so why is that? And what I came up with, because I'm trying to like piece it together, was it's all show. Like he's there, he's screaming, everything is the F word, and it's like I don't care. Like my friends swear a lot, like whatever. That's not what bothers me. It's more of the way he's using his words and his he's peacocking all the time. And I said, I just don't like that.
Mm-hmm.
I said, I
And
don't
I know
like that. And
exactly what you're
he's like,
talking
okay,
about.
well, I don't either. But I was just curious where you were coming from. But I think, I mean, a lot of men are following these guys. A lot of men are following these guys. I mean, they're making millions, if not billions, in this area, probably multi millions, hundreds of millions through this persona that they're putting on. And I wonder what they feel like when they put their head down at night, because I think they feel like the rest of us, like, oh my gosh, I got to do so much work on myself. Well, maybe they're not. Maybe they've confused themselves or sold themselves on their story as well.
That's it right there. They sold themselves on the story. There's a lot, and the people who use the former thing, I used to call it the justification minute, or the whenever you meet someone new, and I don't do it anymore. The reason I use a doctor a lot when I'm doing media is because I use it for TV and I use it for credibility. But a lot of people have no idea that I have a doctorate, a master's, or anything. If you look at me, I got tattoos everywhere. I'm not clean shaven. I got a beard. And when I meet people, I don't really talk about myself because I don't really need. Oh, it's the validation
Oh
minute.
yeah,
That's
I
what I
know
call it.
exactly what
When
you're
you first meet
talking
someone,
about.
they always throw out their bona fides and their credentials and everything, and I'm usually just like, I'm like, that's really cool. It gives me something. I could find something in that conversation to relate to them and build a conversation if I want to, or I could just use it as like, I'm going to take off. But that's the thing is like, you don't need to do the validation minute. And these guys out there, the grifters and the alphas and all that, their validation minute has turned into validation days. Everything they do is to validate themselves for followers and for likes and for this. My social media, 6,000 people. That's a lot of people, but I'm not out there to grift, and I'm not out there. I could talk all day long. Hey, you want to talk about the border, and I'll come up with some crazy rhetoric. I don't need to do that. I don't want to do that. I only want to speak to the facts that I know. And I don't need to say, I used to be this, I used to be that. Hey, look, I worked Al Qaeda, I've worked cartel stuff, I worked human smuggling, human trafficking, and here I am doing a validation thing. But that's the thing is I've done all these things in the past, and I've been a former captain, a former infantry, former this, former that. Right now, I'm a dad, and I'm an amateur shooter.
Oh
I'm an amateur car racer, which is another thing. I mean, I'm doing a lot of different things that are just fun, but I don't need to tell people about it. If anything, I tell them about it so they can get involved with it, or they could take a step outside of the barriers they've set up for themselves. You saw the other day that I read a book called The 12-Hour Walk. I read it 1 week, and I said, you know what? Next week, I'm just going to walk 12 hours. No headphones, no nothing, no social media. I'm just going to walk for 12 hours.
I saw that.
And I did. I'm 49 years old. I'm not in, I'm in decent shape, but I'm not like ultra marathon shape.
Yeah.
But a year ago or 5 months ago, there's no way. So anybody could do it, and that comes up to the protagonist. I mean,
I've been watching, can do it. You've actually been, and I don't know if you do this on purpose, and I think there's a little bit of it, but you seem to dive into things and just go for it. I remember you were kind of documenting your first, competition with a shotgun, and you're like, which one should I take? And didn't you end up taking like a Remington 870, which is like the most basic, like I have one, I've had one forever.
Yeah.
What happened in my head, because I would be the guy that says, oh, I need to go buy the competition shotgun. What happened in my head is like, no, that's just barrier. That's an excuse. You can take your 870 and go do it, and even just decide if it's something cool. Next thing, of course, I see you in a course and you're shooting some badass like assault shotgun. But I really appreciate the fact that you're documenting these things as you go, almost as an everyman, right? Like it's the everyman experience, except you're experiencing a lot of things in life right now.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing is you can sign up for these competitions. They're all over the place. And I just did my research, jumped into it. The shotgun was fun. I shot like shit. No problem. I half the time I go to these competitions, if there's 5 stages, I don't really get a good stage until like the last stage. But all before that, I'm learning something. And I'm using different guns. So if I'm going to like an IDPA, I'll use like a little mini P365 because that's what I would carry in my day-to-day life. If I'm doing a USPSA, I'll use a regular Walther. If I'm doing a 3-gun, it'll be like, hey, you know what? I'm going to use this, and that. But just get used to everything and have fun. I'm not there to win. Maybe in a couple of years, if I get good at it, I'll be there. But now, anybody just go and have fun. So I was
a little inspired by the 12-hour walk. Like it made me think a bit. I do walk. Well, I walk about 45 to a minute or to an hour every single morning, like every morning. Usually I wear a rock. I'm like, well, and I do weight training. And I was like, I don't know. That would not be easy. It would not be easy at all, but it's not going to be overly hard. It's mentally hard. Yes. Physically, yes, but not like going for a marathon run.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
no. And that's the thing is like, I've learned that don't work out super hard the day before, like I did. And then account for hills because the last 5 hours was mostly uphill. And don't worry about the distance. Just worry about getting out there. And
do you feel like rucking helped a lot in preparing for that? Because you've been rucking a lot lately.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why I love rucking. And I like the thing I like about rucking too is just getting out there and clearing your head. A lot of times when you're running, you don't really, you're just thinking about like the foot pounding on the ground and this and that, and you're trying to keep motivated. With rucking, it's not crazy oxygen level deprivation. It's just you're getting out there, your body's getting a hell of a workout, and you could think. And the
Yeah,
older I
I'm
get, the
49
more I
too,
want
so
to
I
just
totally
have some
get it.
time to think.
The do you use a GoRuck pack? Yeah.
I do. I use two of them. One is when I do the 50 or 50
One of
plus
the
pounds.
one
I
of the
use
granddaddies.
geez, I have an old GoRuck, and then I use the yeah, I think it is. I need a new one, and then I
Okay.
have a
Okay.
just a plate holder that it holds 30, but then I kind of shoved
Yeah.
an extra 5 pounds in there with some weights. And what I do is I Velcro a tourniquet on there, and I
Yeah.
bring a little knife with me
I
and
have
some
GoRuck
water, and
packs,
that's about all
and
I need.
people are like, what do you put in them? I'm like, plates. I have a little emergency kit in there just because if I ever run up on something, I want to,
Yeah.
there's room for it. But I did want to take this opportunity because GoRuck, you kind of connected us with them for the big events. So we have GoRuck packs. We bought a load of GoRuck packs. They're not cheap. But once I did that, I bought one before, and I'd been rucking with a 511 pack or some other pack, and it was fine until I tried the GoRuck.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, like I don't have to have shoulder pain that way the entire place. They're so incredibly amazing. Yeah, Go
Nope.
Rucker 425 liter, and it's just incredible. But those plate holders are really nice, like just the plate chest strap, super simplistic.
Yeah. Yeah, and I found that it's
Yeah,
really awesome. I want to get the 45-pound plate one and kind of stick to those two because I think with the 45 I
yeah,
could do the same type of thing I'm doing right now, just shoving a weight in there. But I love it because I might strap on a
yeah,
Camelback or something like
yeah.
that, but I don't really drink a lot of water if I'm only doing a couple hours. And I call them like the speed rocks where I'll get out there and I'll just do 3 miles, 3.5 miles. And I don't really
Well,
need
that's what I'm
water, so I
trying to
don't need to
tell
carry
men.
anything. And if I
I think
do
I
it,
made a
just a water
post
bottle's
last
great.
week, like a backpack and throw some books and throw some of your old college books in there until it's uncomfortable and do it until it's normal and then grab more weight. And then when you want to spend some money, here's what you do. And that's what I absolutely love about it is, even with our trip to Montana, like we're not going to fly plates for everybody, but we'll figure out a way to weigh those packs down. And just, I don't care if you go find a rock, like,
Yeah. Listen, here's what you need. You need some sandbags,
yep.
you need some duct tape, and you just need that's all you need to do. Just fill the sandbags up with whatever to make
Yeah.
30, 35
Yeah.
pounds. Duct tape that sucker
Now
up
I
and
do
throw it in
prefer
there.
my weight high. It just works better. But yeah, that's how I started.
Yeah,
Yeah,
me too.
that's how I started. Now
Yeah, but if
I
you're only going
actually
3 or 4 miles, it's like,
every probably 10 rucks, I'll start running. I'll get a mile in. I'm like, I'll just start kind of like trotting. It's not a run. And and I'll do like 2 or 3 miles just at a really slow running pace just to kind of pick it up. But there's like nothing you can't do. And then I do ones where every mile I'll do a certain amount of squats with the pack on. So you're doing weighted squats. There's so much you can do. You've lost a bunch of weight lately. That's significant.
yeah, I
Yeah.
lost 40. And yeah, it's pretty good. It's awesome. I have my trainer though is awesome. He's a Aaron Williamson, and he's a former
Okay.
Marine. No,
Gotcha.
he's not a former Marine. He's a veteran Marine. That's one thing. Marines are never a former Marine. But if you've ever seen J.K. Simmons, he's a world class
Mm-hmm.
actor. He got him in shape for a movie called Whiplash, and he's got like Zac Efron in shape, Stallone, all sorts of everybody. And now he's trying to do like getting the common man in shape or woman. But he's really he
You're right.
helped me out. Now I didn't
Yeah.
have to pay for the course because we're friends and stuff, but he tailor made that thing, and I highly recommend if someone wants to
Mm-hmm.
get out there and get a plan. He had me down to measuring my food, my workouts, but then I started supplementing extra workouts in there. So yeah, 40
Nice.
pounds in
Nice.
90 days. His program is called Intense 90, and I highly recommend that. But it also has me when I started doing these. Look, before this, I wasn't doing shooting events. I wasn't doing this. I wasn't doing that. But now I am. Now I want to do short sprints and stuff to help me with the shooting
Yep.
matches. My next big thing I'm
Oh, I've
working
done
on
it
is
for
I'm doing the
years.
Murph, which is like a CrossFit type
That's
thing.
actually,
And
I'd
then
love to. I'd
you're
love to
going to be
have
doing it
something to
with me.
attach to,
You're
because I
doing it
just
with me,
usually just go
Scott.
do it.
You don't even.
But I'd love to be. Yeah. Oh yeah. No doubt. That's
No, you're
awesome.
going to do it now. Protectors Podcast is an
Okay.
official host.
Yep.
The other thing too is I'm doing a
Oh, you're
100
gonna do
mile
a
bike
century,
ride,
huh?
a century they call it. So I'll be doing that
The
in about
next
a
day,
month and
you'll
a half.
probably wonder why.
No, it's just fun. Yeah, why not? That's the thing. Is like, why not? Well, that's the thing.
Yeah.
Is like I'm at the point now where I want to see what I could do to push my body, and I want to push it and push it and
Well,
push it and
there's
see
this
how
really
far I can go,
interesting
and that's
thing I've
mentally
noticed
as well.
recently.
So I mean,
Um,
everything.
and I hope people don't feel called out on this, but in my circle, there's a lot of like, push yourself physically, push yourself physically, push yourself physically. But there's been a few obstacles recently with these guys that talk about pushing yourself physically. And I realized that they are mentally strong when it comes to physical things, but when it comes to emotional difficulty, they fold like a paper airplane. I mean, they are just done.
Mm-hmm.
And that made me really think
Yep.
of the importance of being all around resilient and being prepared in your mental, your emotional, spiritual, everything. Like, are you going to fold easily when things get tough? And these guys, they go about life on, I'm super resilient and I know what I'm doing, and then something comes up that kind of challenges them a little bit, and it's like they just kind of shrink back, and it's really sad. What do you do to keep yourself like ready for those mental, emotional challenges? Oh, that's huge. Yeah.
I stopped drinking for one. I'll have a beer here and there, but I'm not drinking regularly. The other thing too is I'm learning as much as I can all the time, reading, writing, getting certifications, still getting certifications, this time for cyber, because I'm interested in that stuff. I'm trying to be resilient as much as I can and know a lot. If you keep your
Right.
mind working, then it's not going to get off on some tangents. If you keep your mind busy, and out of everything I'm doing,
I noticed.
I never really put anything
Yeah.
about my family on social media, but I'm really focusing on that. Focusing on being a great father, being there with my kids, spending time with my kids. That keeps me mentally in shape. As I show them love, they're showing me love. I'm not getting down. My depression has gone down. My just taking that step and getting off the couch and walking and being physical
Oh yeah. It's
and
powerful.
moving my body has shown my kids that they could do it too. So if I get up and I do a 12-hour walk, my kids are like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm going to walk 12 hours, no social media, no nothing." And they're like, "You can?" I'm like, "Yeah." The one day I got up and I said, it was a Friday afternoon. I said, "You know what? For Father's Day, I'm going to get off my couch, walk to my front door, and I'm going to take a 55-pound rock and I'm going to walk to the Lincoln Memorial, which is 13 miles. And I did.
Yeah.
My kids see me doing stuff like that, and it shows them that they could do it. Another reason I started competing is because I want them to show that I could still compete, I could
Yep.
still do stuff. So while they're doing all their sports, I'm doing my sport.
Yeah.
So it gets them involved too. So now they're like, "Huh, maybe I should do that."
It does.
So
I
it's
was
more
just
of
talking to
it keeps you
another guy I was
mentally
interviewing for the
focused.
podcast, and we were talking about my son, my 14-year-old started band, and band in Texas goes literally from 7 a.m. to about 9 p.m. We pick him up at 9 p.m. and he has a lunch break, but they just sit there and eat, and then he's got a dinner break. We get him for 2 hours, which ends up being an hour between transition. But before this started, I'm like, "Hey, you've been working out all summer." I don't ask him to work out. He just comes in the gym and joins me. And he's like, "No, well, I'm not stopping." And I didn't believe him. He's up at 6 a.m. in the gym, ready to go, 14 years old. And well, it's insane.
Scott, where do these kids come from, man? Same
What is
way
he
with
doing?
mine,
He's
man.
watching us.
They're
He's
lifting.
watching you.
14
He's
years old.
watching
He's lifting all the time.
persistence, consistency, always working on
Yep.
bettering ourselves. And I'm not preaching it. I'm not telling him to go get in the gym, but I'm talking about doing hard things and keeping yourself, in shape. And his mom does the same thing. And the whole thing of the power of the modeling that you're doing right now, that is what parenting is really about. It's not what you're telling them. It's about what you're doing. So yeah, Yeah. It's insane. I can't wait to see this generation of
Absolutely.
kids kind of, they're struggling through the COVID thing. You know, they struggled through the COVID thing, but they're going to come up. I think they're going to be pretty stinking resilient. I think they're going to be.
Yeah, and I think, you know, I always see these kids like, oh, this new generation. The problem is with social media,
Right.
people are seeing things differently. They're seeing the bad and they're not seeing the good. These kids nowadays, my daughter is a machine. My son is a machine. She's 12. He's 14. And same thing with your son. There's a whole generation out here who are like, they could look at their social media, they could play their video games, but they are, can you imagine 14 at our age?
Right.
Like
yeah,
hitting a gym all the time and watching like your calories and hydration.
yeah, it's pretty cool.
I didn't know anything about water when I was a kid. Now
It's
these
pretty
kids
cool.
are
And I
drinking
think if
water
you're-
all the time. I
you
mean,
know, if you're listening
simple
to this, your
things
kids
like
aren't
that,
doing
though.
those
You're
things,
like,
you gotta-
wow.
Like literally, that's my challenge to you. Like, what are you doing? Because my boys, both of them, focus on hydration because their mom and I focus on hydration so much.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. It is pretty awesome. And my son, my
It's weird.
18-year-old son, just went in for an
It's
interview,
awesome.
and he's like, "Oh, I got to talk about like leadership and stoic philosophy," and like, sweet, cool. Like, I'm glad you're into that stuff. But he's like, they told me right on the spot they're hiring me. I'm like, yeah, well, like, not many 18-year-olds come in with as much leadership training, and so it's been fun. But again, it's a call to parents, to dads, to just go do the things that you really should be doing, because that's what really speaks volumes for your kids. So you're working on a book right now. You've got Unwavering. What was the second book you wrote? Out of the Shadows. And is that about kind of the whistleblowing?
Out of the Shadows.
Yeah.
That's just about the migrant kids at the border. More about the kids at the border, and kind of gives you a real good snapshot overview of what's going on at the border when it comes to
that's been kind of a hot
migrant
topic
children
recently. So when did you write that one? Okay. Yeah.
I wrote that about.
So let's tell everybody where they
ago.
can find you so they can start following you. Not that you need more followers, but I think they should be following you. Yep.
Well, I use Instagram at Dr. Jason Piccolo. And then but the podcasts are all over. If you follow the Protectors podcast, look for this mug or a guy with tattoos on the cover, because there's some other ones out there portraying the Protectors.
Yeah,
and that'll also be
cool. Yep.
Becoming a Protagonist is attached to that show too. So the episodes will be on there.
You have some cool swag. I bought a
if you're on LinkedIn, just Jason
24 or not a Reagan, excuse me, Rambo 24 shirt. You have a cool mug, so I know you have some
Rambo
really kind of cool stuff out there.
I love it.
And yeah, oh yeah, no, totally, I can tell.
Yeah, and that stuff's basically priced at cost, just because. Yeah.
That's
so if
awesome.
anybody out there wants to buy swag, just tell me and I'll give you a heads up.
But yeah, we'll see you here in a month. Thank you so much for coming on. Oh, and congratulations on your Jack Carr. I don't know how many times you've interviewed Jack Carr, but you interviewed Jack Carr right after they kind of nailed the deal for the show.
Yeah, that was awesome. I interviewed him. Like, I literally walked over to the National Mall, did a Zoom or a Skype call with him and recorded it.
I was like,
the
dude,
day
I think
he found out that
right
Chris Pratt was going to be
that they kind of had signed the deal. Yeah, you told him he hit the jackpot.
I did.
Oh, was he?
Like an hour later.
You just side.
His publisher's a little mad at me, but hey, you know what? It's okay.
What a great opportunity, though. I mean, now he's
blown
up.
Bit.
He was already big before, but that show is ridiculous. I don't know what you think of it. I thought it was ridiculously awesome so far. So, yeah. Right on, Jason. It's always a pleasure. Can't wait to see you in a month. We're going to go rock. We're going to talk. We're going to spend time at the fire. We're going to do cool things. Can't wait.
Thank you for listening to the Brotherhood of Fatherhood podcast. If you enjoyed the podcast, be sure to share it with your friends, your family, and follow us on social media. If you are a father, make sure you join our Facebook group, the Brotherhood of Fatherhood. Hit the subscribe button and tune in next time for more podcasts from the Brotherhood of Fatherhood.